everyone. Today we have a very special episode. It is an episode discussing what is the hole in the Quranic narrative, and I think we found it. I had someone some time ago who gave me a document. He's a statistician. He did a fantastic statistical analysis of the Quran, cross-referencing it with the Bible, and we discovered there are some serious problems in the standard Islamic narrative, and I think we can definitively mathematically prove it today, and it's going to make sense to all of you. Let me give you a brief introduction, then of course I'll introduce my amazing guests. But so 96%, right? That is the percentage of named individuals in the Quran who are biblical characters. 96% of the Quran focuses on the Bible. Now, if Muhammad is truly in Mecca and he's preaching to an ignorant pagan audience in the Jahiliyyah who had forgotten monotheism or never learned any monotheism, why is his entire cast of characters taken straight out of the Bible? Now, the text also claims to be a war against Meccan polytheists, yet it fails to name a single contemporary pagan enemy of the Muslims besides Abu Lahab, which is a nickname that means the father of flame. It's not even a name. And about 40% of the time, the speaker isn't talking about Arabs or about Meccans. He's talking about either Jesus or Moses. 40% of the time. Now, you don't reference biblical figures like Korah, and these are obscure biblical figures like Korah or the sleepers of Ephesus, to pagans who don't even know they exist. You don't explain, well, actually, you guys are wrong about this because they don't know who those characters are. So you only do that if your audience is already knowledgeable and fully steeped in Judeo-Christian theology. And that's what we're going to discuss today. So welcome, Usama. How are you doing?
Doing great, doing wonderful. Greetings to you and our wonderful audience in the name of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. And good to see brother JC as well.
Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you very much for the invite. This is going to be a very good episode. It goes very well with everything else that we've been discussing with Callum, with Odon, and with everybody else to show that the narrative is false and giving a bit more of an indication of what was going on when it was written. So looking forward to this one, Lloyd.
All right. Yeah. So this is going to be very much in line with all the work we've been doing with Odon, as he says. Usama, what I've said to you, I saw you nodding your head. Any thoughts on what I said before I jump into the document?
It is an amazing thing. Talking about the prophethood of Muhammad and the prophecy of Muhammad, the Quran, it's a joke. It's a comedy. There's so much we can be said about that. We can go for a good 10 shows, but we're gonna do our best to finish it today in the next 6.5 hours, I believe, or 7 hours the most. And then we're gonna go to bed because we have to wake up in the morning tomorrow, you know. But seriously, Muhammad is telling us in the Quran, for every nation, Allah sent a prophet. That itself is a problem. Why? Because we got many nations: the Chinese, the Africans, the Asians, the European, the North and South America. These are nations who did not have any prophets. Add to that, we know that in the Quran, Allah declared in a couple of verses, Quran chapter 29 and Quran chapter 45, that only the children of Israel, we assigned, past tense, we gave, past tense, to the children of Israel the prophethood and the book. So, and I could not see out of this Bible, holding my hand, any other prophet anywhere in the world except the Jews. So now we talk about the prophecy or the book of Muhammad, the Quran, and you give me this number, 96 of it.
Yep.
Have anything to do by this, what we talk about in the Bible. So it's a problem. But Muslims see, here's the problem. The biggest problem is not the problem of Islam or the falsehood of the Quran or the falsehood of Muhammad teaching. The biggest problem is the empty head of the Muslims who believe in the Quran. Have the Muslims studied and learned and asked questions like you do in every broadcast we have done in the last 2 years, whatever time we spent together? Muslims will say goodbye to Allah, goodbye to Muhammad, goodbye to Islam, because there's nothing there. as we're going to see today in our broadcast, Lord is willing.
Yep. So this opens up with The Religion of the Quranic Pagans, God and the Lesser Deities by Patricia Crone from the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton. And this was published by Brill. And they speak here on page 169, idols. The Quran has many stories of idols, but they relate to the biblical past. So the idol references relate to the Bible. And they say here, above all, Abraham. So they speak of Abraham and his historical or biblical encounters with idols. It doesn't speak of the pagans of Mecca. It speaks of Abraham above all, right? And then, of course, it speaks here of
Brother Lloyd, yeah, if you don't mind, there is no problem for me for Muhammad to talk about Abraham and the idols of Babel. Okay. By the way, the Bible did not go in details about it like Muhammad did in the Quran. But the problem is he is not talking about any of the idols of his days, the idols of his people. If he is the prophet who was sent by Allah to the Arab nations, and we got all these hundreds of idols, as much as you talk about Abraham, that's fine. That was yesterday. How about today? How about your people whom Allah sent you to? Why don't you talk about them? That is my question.
Well, let's finish this. This is the introduction, and then we can discuss further. So now she says here, the only reference to contemporary idols in a surah classified as Meccan comes in connection with the institution of pilgrimage. In 22:30, lawful to your cattle except those mentioned to you as exceptions, but shun the impurity of idols. Al-Rihsa min al-Awtani. Here, as is so often, she says, it is unclear what the book has in mind, but the context suggests that what is being forbidden is a type of food. So is this really an idol reference? And then she goes on, the sum total of references to idols in non-biblical contexts in the Quran. One would not guess from this that the Kaaba is supposed to house a deity called Hubal, that 360 idols are supposed to have surrounded it, that every house in Mecca reputedly had its own idol, that one of the Prophet's opponents was an idol maker. So there's a lack of detail. So there's a huge discrepancy between historical tradition, that's the Quranic tradition or the Islamic tradition, and internal Quranic content. The text was addressed explicitly to a biblically literate monotheistic audience, not a pagan one.
Yeah.
JC, any thoughts before we continue?
Yeah, just briefly, something I had not actually noticed until now when you were reading this from Patricia Crone is we are doing these shows with Odon saying and Kalam, there is no Mecca, there was no Mecca, and so on. And the story of Islam says that, there were so many idols, but that's clearly not the case. First, you actually need a city, and then the people who are going to travel there, maybe you can create their costumes. So if idols ever made it to Mecca, first you need to have the city. So we're talking 8th century onwards. At that point is when they can start putting idols if they want there to attract people from different religions, but certainly not in the 7th century. So I think it's possible that pagans ended up going to Mecca, but that would have been way after Islam once they hear that there is this great pilgrimage place, but certainly not during the time of Muhammad.
All right. So we have the standard Islamic narrative, right? Muhammad preached in Mecca to a primarily pagan audience, a polytheistic audience, right? Who are distinct from Jews and Christians. That's the standard narrative. Now, the speaker in the Quran wants to convert these ignorant idolaters in the Jahiliyyah to a restored Abrahamic monotheism. He wants to correct corrupted scriptures passed down by Jews and Christians. So a couple of questions. Does the internal data of the Quran corroborate a pagan audience? And two, if the audience is pagan, why is all of the data in the Quran 96% biblical? So
yeah, good two questions. Good two questions. And I'm sorry to tell you, the answer is no. No and no. That's not what the message of the Quran. I read the Quran, I studied the Hadith. I mean, even if it's not in the Quran, maybe you think Muhammad will address these issues in his own talk outside the Quran in the Hadith. No, he never talked about these idols. the 360. I mean, all what we have heard actually in schools in Egypt, that when Muhammad came back to Mecca after the migration to Yathrib, which he took by the edge of the sword and make it Medina, the city of Muhammad, is he destroyed all these idols. What are their names? I mean, why he left it there for 13 years while claiming to be a prophet? I mean, think about it. Muhammad went to the Hajj and the Umrah. He went and visited Mecca, and he fulfilled his duty with the black stone, with the Kaaba, as an Abrahamic follower, the true, correct one on the Abrahamic faith. But he ignored all these hundreds of gods which were inside the same place. Think of Gideon in the Bible. What did Gideon do? Just ignored the gods which the people worshiping, or he break them and destroys them. Yeah. He destroyed them. Well, if Muhammad is let's say, if Muhammad is an equal prophet to Gideon, we don't even believe Gideon is a prophet. Okay, Gideon was not a prophet. He was just a godly man who's led by God to judge over the children of Israel and freeze them from the idolatry and the worship of idols. But if Muhammad is just equal to Gideon, at least do what Gideon did. Destroying all these gods. But no, he was there between the age of 40 to 53 and he did nothing about it. He did not bother to say hello to everybody going in and out worshiping these gods. And then when he came back, he destroyed them. So what did he destroy? We do not know. Why he destroyed them? We do not know. Can you give me some details about it?
We'll talk about that. Yeah, no, there's a discrepancy. So remember, the text in the Quran assumes that the audience is already intimately familiar with complex biblical theology, with obscure biblical theology. So let's have a look at the data. We'll start with the statistics, right? This is our introduction to the statistics. Remember, do remember to like, share, and subscribe, right? And share this to people to annoy them too, because let's annoy the Muslims, because I think they've earned it given their farcical stories. Right, so the data of a prophet. Now, this is the reference to people's names in the Quran as a percentage of all references. So this here is the Old Testament. This blue wedge here, that is the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, non-biblical individuals, this is Arabs, Greeks, etc., make up at most 4% of the names in the Quran. The whole balance, 96% of the names, right, the biblical characters, are all from the Bible. This is the New Testament, and this segment here is the Old Testament. So the quantitative statistical evidence shows us that 96% of names of named individuals are biblical characters, right? Showing that the speaker is almost exclusively oriented towards stories and figures from the Bible. He's not talking to a polytheistic audience. So the remaining individuals in the Quran are only 7 non-biblical characters. 7 in the entire book are non-biblical. That would be Muhammad, Zayd, Abu Lahab, Luqman, Alexander the Great, Dhul Qarnayn, and the prophets Hud and Salih. And we'll look into them. Now, even Hud and Salih possess very strong linguistic.
Why did he leave? Why did he leave Shaib?
Is Shuaib also in there?
Yes, no, it's not here. He's the first Arab prophet because you have Hud, Salih, and Shaib. These are the 3 Arab prophets. So we maybe just need to send a note to a little bit corrections there or something, you know.
Okay, then we'll correct it. Yeah, as I said, I got the document from someone some time ago. So, okay, yeah, but he's not presenting it. I mean, he didn't want to come on for whatever the reasons were at the time. Okay, so then fine. So that's 8. Okay, but that still doesn't change the 4% figure. It's still the same. Right? Now, Hud and Salih possess very strong linguistic and genealogical links to the biblical figures Eber, Judah, and Shelah. Now, this is a very narrow list, and it shows that the Quranic pagan opposition is basically entirely anonymous. And this contradicts the very high density of named pagan enemies found in accounts in the Bible, like Joshua and Paul. I'll skip ahead quickly, and I'll just show you. So, for instance, if we go to someone like Paul, here you go. Actually, I'll go right to the end. Let me just go right to the end. Have a look here. Paul has 42% pagans, 58% known Jewish and Christian figures. Joshua, right? Let's look at Jeremiah, the percentage spread in Jeremiah. Let's look at Moses. And now you come to the story of Muhammad in the Quran, and you've got almost nobody. in relative terms. Right. So, any thought on that before I continue?
I not only I have a problem that he did not mention names of idols in his days, he gave us many of the names out of the Bible, Old and New Testament, wrong names. What is so much about the ignorance of Allah and Jibreel, not Muhammad? Muhammad was Muslim claim is illiterate. I don't believe he was illiterate. We can talk about that another time. But why Muhammad did not give me any names right? I mean, literally, he could not give me the Jesus name right or John the Baptist. He put him Yahya instead of Yohanna. It's a wrong name. But even the Old Testament, he did not give us too many right names. And in many cases, he just mentions their numbers. He did not mention their names. I mean, think about it. Jacob have 12 sons. So Muslim believes that he have 12 sons. What are their names? We do not know. Muhammad never mentioned except Joseph and his brother. As is his brother name is his brother. You know, what is so hard for Allah to give me some right name about even this 96% of the names mentioned
So,
from Old Testament, New Testament? Yeah, makes no sense.
So that matches the point I made earlier. The Quran assumes that people know the Bible very well. It assumes they already have the knowledge of the Bible, and the Quran doesn't tell the biblical stories. It simply alludes to them. It makes a reference to them. It doesn't tell them.
So it not only he assumed they will know it, he's afraid to give us details that he will be caught making errors, as much as all that which is written from the Old Testament, New Testament is simply a chain of errors. Imagine if he gave us more details. The Quran, it is the only book, Lloyd, I have ever read in my life. And I read hundreds, if not thousands of books. It is the book without any details. Right. And even though without details, there's plenty of errors. God help us. Go ahead, bro.
No, so the Quran assumes knowledge, right? I have it in my notes here. The Quran assumes knowledge, right? Now, especially Gabriel Said Reynolds worked on this. The Quran assumes biblical knowledge, right? For instance, in the golden calf incident, Quran 20, verses 83, right? The text jumps straight to the confrontation between Moses and Aaron, but it omits the entire setup. So it jumps over a huge amount of detail and goes straight to other aspects of the story without explaining anything. Anything you want to add, JC, before we go on?
Yeah, a couple of things that, yeah, you're absolutely right. If a book was addressed to the Chinese, you would expect that book to be absolutely packed with Chinese names and things with their costumes and stuff. So if the Quran is meant to be with, for the pagans, you would find references everywhere and they are not there. And in terms of names and people having the knowledge of the Judeo-Christian traditions, even Abraham, you would expect to have Abraham mentioned as Abram, and then the name changing, or Jacob, the same. But no, those things are just put there, like in the case of Abraham, and that's that. It's like, but that means that people actually knew that the name had changed. So it seems to assume the knowledge quite strongly.
Yeah, he gave us 3 different names for Abraham, wrong names. And as he talked about him as a little young man, Fata is young man, I guess early teenager, he always gave him the name Abraham, but not the name Abram. That's a big problem.
Yeah. So if we look at the people in the Quran, right, let's look at references to people's names, the proper nouns in the Quran as a percentage of all references. Muhammad, if he were a figure, is referenced less than 1% of the time, but he's the main character, supposedly, the main character. Jesus is referenced 21% of the time. In fact, we can probably find more than that if we look, right? Moses is 18% and everyone else is 61%. Now, we can redo these numbers and come up with different figures, but Muhammad is still going to be almost non-existent in his own supposed book. Jesus is the main character.
I kind of disagree with that comment that Muhammad is only mentioned 4 times in the Quran, and then one time by the name Ahmad, but because there's plenty of Y-O-U, and when you read Scott's interpretation, Allah here was speaking to Muhammad, or you here is go back to Muhammad. So it is obviously more than 1%, but of course, much less than Moses.
We're talking about proper nouns. This is a reference to proper nouns.
Proper nouns, yeah.
Says here proper nouns. And if you look at references to Jesus, Jesus crops up 180, 190, maybe more times. It's still more than Muhammad. And if you look at Moses, it comes up about 150 to 160 times. Still more than Muhammad. So even if you look at oblique references or indirect references, Jesus and Moses are still more than Muhammad. So why is Jesus the main character in this book about Muhammad and Allah, which is really interesting? So Muhammad, so 40% of the time, the speaker is talking about Jesus and Moses by name, right? Muhammad is a negligible statistical outlier compared to established biblical figures. So logically, this profile, this forensic profile, contradicts the narrative of a prophet primarily engaging a pagan audience, as his overwhelming focus is on the Judeo-Christian canon. So we've got a target audience already well-versed in biblical history.
Yeah.
So,
And
if I may as well, with Muhammad, yes, because we're looking at proper names, what a coincidence that in the 4 places where it appears, they don't say when Muhammad ibn Abdallah, or it says when Muhammad of Mecca. No, it just puts Muhammad. It's like, okay. So in most of the cases, you can actually create some form of lineage, even if you have from Jesus, son of Miriam, or Moses and Aaron, and these sort of things. When it comes to Muhammad, he's in isolation, no names of parents, the city nearby, nothing. It's just Muhammad, and don't ask any questions about it. Super cool.
yeah. And if you want to change it to from Muhammad to Muhammad, obviously now the praised one, we're not talking about a human period. So we're talking about Christ, Jesus, who is the praised one. So now you can make it, instead of 21%, you can add this 1%, make it 22%.
Yeah, just give me a second. Yeah.
Are you? I want to hear at least JC agreement or disagreement with me.
Yeah, the 4 verses that mention Muhammad, they are talking about Jesus. How the word got in there, that's a different question, and we can explore. Maybe we can have a talk about it at one point. But certainly, when you read those 4 verses in context and what is going on before and after, they're not describing the Muhammad of the standard Islamic narrative.
So in that case, it will be 22% Jesus, 18% Moses, 61 everyone else.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, so Jesus comes up as obviously Isa in the Quran. Now, he's consistently titled Al-Masih, the Messiah, and Kalimatullah, right, Word of God, which are high-order Christological terms that would be incomprehensible to a pagan audience. But they are central to the 7th century debates. In fact, that from the 4th century onwards with the Melkites, the Jacobites, the Nestorians, right? These are debates that went on from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th centuries, right? And then Moses was renamed to Musa. Now he's framed as the primary lawgiver and the archetype for the Quranic speaker's own journey. So the text is preoccupied with his confrontation with Pharaoh, which is 18% of Moses' story in the Quran. 18% of the time, the Quran talks about Moses' time with the Pharaoh. And so it assumes that the audience already accepts the Torah's authority.
Yeah, but once again, I would say even what Muhammad wrote in the Quran about Moses and Pharaoh and Moses is not accurate. This information is not accurate.
I'm not saying it's accurate. At no point am I saying the Quran is 100% a historically reliable book. We know this. I mean, we're not going over old ground. We know that's not true. We're looking at the statistics from this perspective.
Just numbers of words and names. Yeah, I get it.
I mean, there's a guy going, yeah, but doesn't Jesus mean camel semen? Or sorry, Isa mean camel semen? Look, do me a favor. Let's stick to the topic. If you have the evidence, present it. I did ask you to please present the evidence. Okay, give me the evidence. Be specific. Tell me exactly where to find that word means exactly what you say. Do be so kind as to provide us with specific, detailed, explicit citations.
I know you talked about that in the past, Lloyd. I want to go ahead and look for it on my dictionary here to see if that's true at all.
So the Quran functions as a polemical correction of existing monotheistic doctrine. So in other words, it is challenging Jewish and Christian doctrine with its own interpretation It is not an introduction of a new faith to a polytheistic vacuum. It is trying to argue for its perspective within this whole debate between Jews and Christians. And obviously, we're looking at the heretical take on all of this. Okay, so let's look at a word cloud. Muhammad obviously loves Jesus very much, right? So this is a word cloud representation of named individuals in the Quran, right, by proper names and titles. So this is driven by how frequently the individual is mentioned as a percentage of all named individuals. And the number one name in this book is Jesus. Then you have Moses, you have Lot, you have Noah, right? You've got Pharaoh, who comes up a heck of a lot, Abraham, Aaron, and then down here, you've got Korah, you've got Talut, whoever that is, Alexander the Great, Jacob, Job. Does anyone see Muhammad? There he is. Muhammad's up here. This tiny little reference over here. Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah,
The
you need
picture
the magnifying glass. It took me a while to find him. When you actually sent this, I was like, oh, I think Lloyd has forgotten to add Mohammed. It's really there in a little corner.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So now, okay, so what we've got is, again, Jesus, Moses, Joseph, Adam, Noah, all of these biblical characters. Hud, obviously, we're looking at Jews. We'll look at that. And then you've got Isaac, Pharaoh, and others. These are all biblical characters. It is simply talking about the Bible. So this is New Testament individuals. And notice the majority of the time, it is talking about Old Testament individuals. And then this is other. These are Greek, Arab, or non-Jewish, right? The Greek, Arab, and non-Jewish characters are Muhammad, Hud, Abu Lahab, Salih, Zayd, Talut, Alexander the Great, and Luqman. And of course, Ahmed, whatever, yeah. So that's not many people. That's very few, right? So the top 15 names are all from the Bible, right? You have supposedly Jesus, Moses, Pharaoh, Abraham, Noah, Lot, Joseph, Adam, Hud, which sounds a lot like Yahud, the Arabic word for Jew. So this is a reference to the Jews. And based on Hud's story, he can easily be the biblical Judah or Eber, the father of the Hebrews. Then you have Aaron, Isaac, Solomon, Jacob, Ishmael, and Jethro. So here's the question: why are there almost no pagans or polytheists mentioned? They barely appear. Why is the author of the Quran obsessed with Jesus, and the Quran really reads like it wants to be the Bible? So your thoughts, guys?
Even in the life of the Muslims in the West, they always talk about Jesus. They're trying to blend in with the Western people, but say we believe in Jesus, we believe in Moses. Yeah, I never heard them even talk about the rest of these names you're talking about here, except they are using this as a trick. We believe in Jesus, we believe in Moses. You need to believe in Muhammad too. And obviously, I think that's the same technique was done by the early so-called Muslims who would like to talk about Jesus and Moses because they know these are true people, true prophets, true existence. And if we can just exist in the middle of the Jews and the Christian and we add our Muhammad, why not? Maybe they will become Muslims.
Exactly. Always says, I would argue it's disputing with multiple different groups with different deviation on things. That is why it's repeating everything in slightly different variations. And then he mentions Arabia Heresium Ferax, which is Arabia, the bearer of heresies, because that part of the world was the bearer of heresies. When the pagans were all kicked out of Rome, they all ended up in places like Arabia. Yeah, but you would think that if it's talking to pagans and dealing with pagans and interacting with pagans, you'd see more pagan names, but the pagans don't, they barely feature in here. And even some of these names like Salih, as we'll see, these are just repurposed Jewish terms or Syriac terms. These aren't actually pagans. It's just renamed Jewish prophets.
And if I may, for any Muslims who are thinking, or they're going to argue, no, that's because there are pagans, so they need to teach them about the Abrahamic faith. Well, that doesn't make any sense. You cannot just go to a new land and say, well, let me just tell you about what I believe. What the very first step is to say, what you believe is false. Your God is false. These things that you're doing are wrong. And then you have to establish what they have to believe next. So just if anyone actually is thinking, no, this is just how they teach the pagans, that doesn't make any sense. The pagans had to be addressed. This word cloud is showing us who the audience was.
Yeah. Elchanet, some
That is,
apologetics. Yeah,
yeah.
go on, Usama.
That was a case of a true prophet, but Muhammad he never done that. He actually praised everybody, include the three gods of Christ, Lat, Uzza, and Manat, because he wanted people to accept him and just add him to the list of whatever gods they are worshiping, which is a satanic verse, which is gone. It's no longer in the Quran. That's why you could not find these names, Lat, Uzza, Manat, to be one of the gods which you are supposed to be mentioned.
Right. And of course, they don't only rename Jesus, they're obviously renaming all these prophets. We look at that too. Now, what the Quran seems to do is it linguistically masks all of the Hebrew patriarchs, right? It rebrands the biblical lineage, right? So there's basically within the Quran, you've got a total historical vacuum where contemporary pagan enemies and allies should be. The Bible has a wonderful balance between talking about its contemporary environment and within its historical context. The Quran has a complete vacuum, nothing, emptiness. So the only biblical characters referenced in the Quran, okay, we're looking at Hud, right? As per the standard Islamic narrative, he is not the biblical Eber or Judah, but it is such a vague character. But it does seem to be just Eber or Judah, okay, or refer a reference to Jews. It doesn't seem to be a person, it's a group that is somehow being personified. Then Salih, we'll look at this one in detail later. Shelah, father of Eber in Genesis 11:14, or Shelah, son of Judah, Genesis 38:2-5. In the Quran, he's mentioned as following after Hud, right? Then you have Muhammad 4 times, maybe 5 times mentioned by name. Alexander the Great as Dhul Qarnayn. Then you have Abu Lahab. So as per the standard Islamic narrative, he's a Meccan Quraysh leader who opposes Muhammad. He's the only person from the enemies of Islam referenced by name. Yet his name means the father of flame. This could well be a reference to the Zoroastrians, the Persians, who are obviously followers of the god of, well, their symbol was the flame.
But Muslim believe Abu Lahab was the uncle of Muhammad, who did not believe in him.
Right. Yeah. Then Zayd, is he the first Muslim, or who's the first Muslim? That's a question that still no one has quite answered yet, because that gets very confusing.
What do you mean by listen?
Yeah.
Listen. First, it's a mystery in Islam. The word first mean a lot. So if you mean first, well, this is not the first, but there are plenty of other first.
Yep. So is Zayd the first Muslim? So he appears to be the only member of the believers that is mentioned, but it's a very vague references, as always, another very vague reference. And then Luqman, as per the standard narrative, is a wise man after whom Surah 31 is named. Who is Luqman? Yeah. Well, who knows? Let's continue.
Yeah. Don't forget, Zayd is Muhammad's son in adoption, whom he ended his relationship with him as adopted son, as Allah ended adoption completely, calls them by the real father's names. If not, they are your brother, just because Muhammad fell in love, or we can say fell in lust with his wife, who is supposed to be the daughter-in-law.
Okay, so Salih, right? Yeah, say JC.
And also Muhammad's niece, according to the narrative. Sorry.
Yeah, this got too much Epstein vibes here. Let's, Jews. So let's look at Salih. Is this Shelah from Genesis 38:5? Okay, so we're looking at a hostile linguistic takeover. So they're trying to take names, rewrite the characters to suit themselves. So the term Salih, this is the Arabic Salih here, but it's actually Western Syriac. All right, it's actually Western Syriac, and it's very similar to the Arabic. Okay, and Salih, if you look here, this is the term Shelah. Shelah. right? It's a proper noun, right? And it's distinguished from Silas, which is in Acts. And in Genesis 38:5, you have Sheila as a proper noun, right? So the name's origin is Eastern Christian, it's Judeo Christian, right? It is not from Meccan paganism. It's a proper noun that is transferred from the biblical canon into the Quran, right?
Wow.
So now it's actually two things. One, it's a person, right? Patriarchal lineage of the Jews. And two, it's a toponym or a place name that is within the northern Levant. We're looking at Syria, basically. So north of Arabia, right? So Sheila is the son of Arpachshad in Genesis 11:14. His descendants inhabited the upper Mesopotamia, northern Syria region, right? Now, a couple of points to make before I get to the text on the left. For instance, the Quran says that these people, these pagans, were hewing houses out of the mountains. Now we know, for instance, I've spent a couple of days in Petra. There, they hewed houses out of the mountains. Or you can go to various other places where they made houses in the mountains out of caves. There are no such mountains in Mecca. What mountains did they hew houses out of? Right? They speak of springs and gardens in the Quran. In Mecca, where? When? Right? They speak of agriculture and olive oil, right? Palm trees. Palm trees require 180 liters of water per tree every day. This is physically impossible. Olives do not grow in the 7th century Hijaz climate, right? I've been around Mecca. I've been around that city. I've traveled in that. I've been to Taif. I've spent days there. So your thoughts on this so far, Usama?
It doesn't make too much difference to Muhammad where he put the olive tree. He actually put it on the top of Mount Sinai, which is a granite land. I mean, you could not plant any seed about any tree, about any grass on the top of Mount Sinai. It's solid granite. But somehow Muhammad put the olive trees up there. It's just, Muhammad did not have logic of what he's talking about, if there was a Muhammad we're talking about. But obviously, these are very good thought, man. I wish Muslim will watch this broadcast. We should share that broadcast along with the Muslims just to get them to think.
Do you know, yesterday I got mass reported and I got my YouTube broadcast shut down?
MashaAllah.
Yeah, we were doing really well, and then boom, suddenly the stream just died. We were still streaming to X and to Rumble, but YouTube just like, obviously I got mass reported. So yeah, everyone's a problem.
The devil is doing a good number.
Yeah. So now the Quran uses these high order Christological names like Al-Nasi and Kalamatullah, right? Word of God. So this means you're talking about a biblically familiar audience. Now, so I had a look at the word at the Mecca and the Muslims, okay? So I just added some notes here. I did this. So a survey of over 120 contemporary Byzantine, Sasanian, which is Persian, and Syriac and Armenian documents from 620 to 700 AD reveals the following. There are 0 mentions of Mecca. None. So despite detailed accounts of Arab conquest by eyewitnesses like Thomas the Presbyter from AD 634 and Sabaeus in the 660s, the city of Mecca is never named, right? The Saraceni, if you look at them, the Saracens, contemporary chronicles refer to the invaders as Tayaye from the Syriac, or Saracens in Greek, or Ishmaelites, but never as Quraysh. And we know that the word Quraysh comes from the Persian, the Sassanid Empire, from Cyrus, Kuroshi, right? That's simply a rebranding of the word Kuroshi for Cyrus, who was like a messiah to the Jews, right? Who restored, the restorer. And they simply just borrowed that name.
Actually,
sorry?
In Arabic, we call him Qurash. Al-Malik Qurash, King Qurash.
King Qurash, yeah. And in fact, but the Persians call him Kuroshi. That's where you get Quraysh. Kurosh, but his name is Kurosh, yeah, but they also called him Kuroshi. So Qureshi, Kurosh, Quresh, clearly borrowed from Cyrus. So, and he, of course, is a biblical character revered in the Old Testament, right? And the Chronicle of 741, which is written over a century after Muhammad, gives us the first external mention of Mecca, but it places Mecca in Mesopotamia between Ur and Haran, not in the Hijaz.
Boy, oh boy, I think the more we dig into that, the more we know that new studies about not found in Mecca exist and such. I mean, you're talking about, brother, look at the dates. The dates you pick is a perfect time to talk about Mecca, to talk about Muhammad, to talk about this. I mean, 620 to 700. If that is the time for somebody to write some truths about that prophet and that big movement and the invasion of the Saudi Arabia Peninsula and the move into North Africa, it's such a time. But you should think about hundreds of times, but even thousands of times, people in such time will be talking about Mecca and Muhammad, but they don't. As a problem.
Yeah, correct. JC, any thoughts?
Yeah, that one of the problems that we have is we keep reading the narrative into every single source. So something that J. Smith says about the sources, he's absolutely right, is the early sources that mention Muhammad, the guy that starts the whole thing, those sources are in different places. They're saying that it is in Iraq and so on. But the way that we normally function is, okay, so here it mentions Muhammad, so the narrative is true. Oh, it says in Iraq. Oh, well, they got the detail wrong. And if it happens once in a historical account, that's fine. People make mistakes, but it happens with every single source. And there is a lot more that is not mentioned, including the term Islam, the term Muslim. They appear first in the Quran, obviously Makkah, and also even the word Quran is not actually attested in any of these sources. There are people who talk about a book of the Arabs, but the word Quran is not actually being written down as that's the name of the book. So there is a lot more to all of this story.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Everything making sense so far, Usama? I mean, everything making logical sense to you so far?
Absolutely. We're floating good in the subject. I'm just excited about the next slide.
So there's only a couple of slides on Salih. Okay. So the Quran seems to be a synthesis of pre-existing data, right? It's taking pre-existing biblical data from what seems to be heretical sources and it's making its own spin on it, right? Arabic Salih, right? Now, the word Salih has multiple meanings. We said it's a place noun, it's a name of a person, but it also functions as a verb, right? So it means to peel, to come off, to flake off, to come in layers and strips, to peel, to shed your skin, right? To strip, to undress, to take off one's clothes, to lay bare, to pour, to move with continuous flow, to flow in a continuous stream, right? Also, see, to flay, to peel the skin of a corpse, of a carcass, to scalp, to remove the scalp, right? And also it means here to post, to send, to dispatch, to mail, to emit, to transmit.
Man, none of this fit the understanding in the Arabic language for the word salih, which means a doer of good. Somebody salih means good. When a man went to jail, say, أيها المعلم الصالح, you good teacher. That's the word salih, good. Muallim salih, good teacher. So if it is an Arabic word, why we could not see our Arabic name? Why we could not see salih, the person who does good?
Yeah, but then the person who does good, is that Johnny who lives on 4th Street? Or is that the
No,
person who does
that's
good,
not the
people who
name.
do good, general category of doing nice things, you know?
Yeah, genuine. No, not a real name for a person. Salih was never mentioned in the Bible and from the sense except the person who does good. You have to add a word to it. A good teacher, a good student, a good worker, a good something. That's how you see it. It
Yeah,
is
so
a
again, it's
description.
extremely vague. It's extremely
Yeah.
unspecific. So it's repurposing existing data for its own purposes, but to transmit. So Salih, right? Now, let's have a look. Let's compare the Quran to the Apostle Paul, to the writings of the Apostle Paul. Now, Paul mentions, depending on how you count it, sometimes it's not exact, but Paul references between 80 and 100 people in his writings. Okay, Paul references approximately, let's split the difference. We say Paul references 90 people. Okay.
Yeah.
So the data in Paul's writings attest to someone who is truly addressing a mixed Jewish and non-Jewish audience, right?
Yeah.
42% of them are pagan or non-Jewish. And then the rest are Jewish or pre-Mosaic biblical characters. That's 58%, right? So the Quran fails to name even its alleged Meccan enemies. It doesn't name anybody. So you've got a complete vacuum of contemporary names. And this contradicts this verified profile here of a genuine missionary engaged in a missionary movement. Paul names something like 90 to 100 people. The Quran names almost nobody. We've just seen Salih isn't a name. It's more like a general description. It's an adjective describing a noun, right?
Yeah, sure, sure. And
So you'll
it
think,
fit perfectly with Paul because listen, he was ministering to the Jewish people, but every time he go to a synagogue or a place where the Jewish people are and they reject him, he turn around and speak to the Gentiles, to the other people in the community. So obviously, you have to see his audience or the people who talk with or minister to are mixed, some Jew and some Gentile. It fit perfect. I guarantee you, if you do the same study with Peter, you find most of them were Jew, except Cornelius, which we read about in Act 10. So you may see 2-3 names of Gentiles, but the rest are going to be Jews because that's where the ministry of Peter, just staying in Jerusalem, was the church there.
we can look into that. I sent you the file, Usama. Sorry I sent it to you so late, but you have the file, so if you want to work further on it, I mean, that'll be great.
Sure.
Anything from you, JC, before we go on?
Yeah, in terms of names as well, the Quran is packed with all of those references, like Usama said earlier, like someone's brother, or actually like, and his wife, and the fisherman, and the little boy, instead of actually using names. So obviously there are two possible reasons for that. One is that the guy telling the stories, he doesn't remember, he doesn't want to mess it up. So he's just saying, oh, his wife, or that the audience is very familiar. You don't need to say the name of Adam's wife because everyone will know is Eve. They will say Adam's wife. That's it. You don't have to give them that piece of information because they already have
Right.
it.
No,
And
exactly.
it's amazing. Yeah, it's so amazing. Muhammad never mentioned names. He said one of them tells the others, oh, it's okay. They were at the village by the sea. Wow. I did not know that there are villages by the sea. But when he mentioned names, he always made boo-boos. I mean, literally, look at the names of which Muhammad mentioned in the Quran. They're filled with errors.
Right. So let's look at what Paul talks about. Let's look at the references. Okay, this is the word cloud from Paul's writings. What's the number one name in Paul's writings?
Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah. Paul's spreading the gospel of Jesus, and he mentions Jesus a lot. So why does the Quran have Jesus as the number one name?
Because Muhammad didn't have any other name to talk about, I guess. He listen, he got more information about Jesus from the Christians and the Arabs who live with. That's why he kind of gave him extra boost there.
Yeah. And also look how many names that we have here. Paul mentions this. I don't know if this is even a complete list of names. Remember, Paul has something like between 80 and 100 names, okay? So you've got Eunice, Ascaeus, Silas, Lucius of Cyrene, Carius, Clement, Aquila, whatever, Isaac, Crispus, Gaius, Cornelius, Adam, Priscilla, Moses, Lois, Syntyche, Hymenaeus, Alexander the Ephesian, Epaphroditus, Mary of Rome, Peter, Jason, Abraham, Euodia, Tryphosa, Erastus. Already we've got more names that we've got here in the Quran. It's crazy. Yeah. Right? If you just look at the number of pagan and non-Jewish characters, the Quran has 7. Paul has just in this short list, you've got far more than 7.
Yeah.
Right? So there are multiple references to pagans and non-Jews. So for instance, non-Jewish political figures, Aretas IV, king of the Nabateans, okay, whose governor Paul has to strategically avoid to escape Damascus, right? Erastus, the city treasurer in Corinth. Pudens, the son of a Roman senator. Then you have Philetus, Hymenaeus, Alexander the coppersmith, Paul says, who did me great harm. Friends and converts like Timothy, Epaphroditus, lover of Aphrodite, Apollos, Titus, Luke. So Paul is really going through Greco-Roman cities. He's telling people about Jesus. He's encountering opposition. He's naming those people, many of whom we can discover historically, and then he wins converts.
So it's not just about putting a bunch of names in his letters to make his letters a little bit bigger. These characters belong to specific places, belong to specific things happen in his life. If they are helping him or harming him, I mean, literally, he got both sides of the story there, and you can read the letter and figure out, wow. It's not made up story. There's not a guy claimed to be, his name is Paul, somewhere in some other country, and he made up a story about something happened somewhere else without details. As
it was a guy in the other part of the city, and then he came to the place where the thing was happening. Are you saying? So,
yeah. Exactly. When you read the Quran, it's the opposite. It's literally, he's talking about somebody we don't know who is he and no details, and one of them, and the one in the middle, and the one on the right side, and that was it. And you have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Any thoughts, JC, before I go on?
No, it's actually very clear, and it's exactly what we would expect to see from a story where it is addressing particular types of people with their news. And actually, something that is always mentioned a lot with Paul is that he uses that in order to explain the stuff to them. He meets them where they are at. But when we get to the Quran, the only references are like the three daughters of Allah, and they are definitely not there. We will get to that. But yeah, everything is making perfect sense. The
Yeah.
Quran had nothing to do with pagans.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I do not know
Amir,
if
go
are
on,
you going to
please.
talk about any of the other Arab prophets or just Saleh? And that was it.
Dude, that was the only one, just as a reference.
All right. Let me get this comment out, if you don't mind, before I forget. Because
Yeah.
I'm waiting on you. But that's okay. Here
Okay.
we go. If Muhammad is the only Arab prophet, that means Salih and Shaib and what's the other what idiot name is Salih, Shaib, and Hud. These are made up. If they are Arabs, then we have a problem that we have 4 Arab prophets. The problem is, for all the years of my life, I grew up to believe that there is only one prophet to the Arab world and then to the whole world by the name Muhammad. But then I was surprised to find these other prophets who are Arabs, and now you tell me that they're not Arabs. I don't know. Are you helping the Muslims who believe there's only one prophet by the name
What
Muhammad
happened
who's
to their
Arab?
writings? What happened to their message?
Well, we don't know. Well,
Where's the
like
history?
I said,
Where did they grow up? Where are their homes? Where are they from?
I mean, think about Abraham. He have all his suhaf, all his books, all of his writing. What happened to the suhaf of Abraham? How about the biggest one? 95% of the books are written by Enoch, and we don't have them.
Yep.
That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a very butthurt Muslim who came on, Mr. Amir 98,000. Dakdok, you've embarrassed yourself on all your debates. LOL. You know what? These guys obviously can't deal with the fact, so they've got to try to deflect, to change the topic. This is a sign of obvious weakness,
Yeah,
right? He
I
can't
love
deal.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, brother Lloyd, if you don't mind, I love it when you do a debate for 2 hours and you go watch it both by the Muslims. It's only 32 minutes. So what happened to the other 1 hour and 28 minutes? They're not there. And that's how I embarrass myself. It's called editing, you nutcase. It's called editing. And
No, we know.
obviously, I mean, it's like, how can or you watch 3 minutes? You watch 3 minutes out of 2.5 hour debate, and I really embarrassed myself. I don't know how. I can embarrass anybody about any debate. Give me the best 2 people who debate each other, and one of them smokes the other, and I'll make the winner very bad. Just I'll cut you a few minutes out of his speech.
Exactly. Exactly. Ower says, in modern research seems to show that the names are distributed correctly, so we can generally take it they came from a person who went through those places during that time. And the names are correct, whereas the Quran butchers the names. It gets them wrong.
Yeah. And once again,
yes,
for that woman, go ahead, brother GC.
Yeah, and this is actually just names, but this comment is as well quite important. We have places when you read the Acts of the Apostles, you know in which city they are, where they are going, and so on. But when you go to the Quran, it's like, where are they? Mecca appears only once, so it's probably a mistranslation. Then it keeps talking about the city, the city, the city. But there are no places. You should have more information in there.
Yeah. Quickly, I'll just continue to my thought with that gentleman who said I embarrass myself when I do debate. They caught one of my teaching where a friend of mine asked me to spell, to pronounce the name of a specific imam. And I told him, I do not know how to spell his name because he is from Pakistan, and Pakistani do not speak Arabic. Oh, my world. The Muslim world took it like back to the point that there is an idiot American by the name Dr. James White, who made a video just to make fun of me by saying, Usama Dakdok does not know the name Qadi, which is an Arabic word. It said, huh?
James White did that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, he hate my guts. He helped Yasser Qadi to take over Texas. That's how stupid he is. I just responded to him again last week. I said, here is your man you brag about, you love so much, you do not know jack about how much damage you and people like you do in the West. And he said, I could not spell the name Qadi. Qaf, Alif, Dad, yeah. I said, no, his name is written in Spanish, in Pakistani language. And I do not know how he pronounce it. It has the letter H in it. How can you pronounce a word in a foreign language, Urdu, or the Pakistani language, however he wrote it and however he said? So you cannot even pronounce my name right. Is it Usama or Usama or Asama? Is it
James.
Dakdok or Dakdok or Dakdok? You know, anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, James White
that's
said
what
that.
people do, yeah, Brother Lloyd. They go to some segment, a minute or two, and somebody is making fun of me because I do not know how to spell a name or pronounce a name in a foreign language. Oh, look, he is unqualified
Oh,
to
no, they
talk
have
about
to
Islam.
find something.
I'm not
Yeah. No,
concentrating
let's move
on
on.
what we're talking about here. I mean, this
Let's move
gentleman,
on.
can you tell us what we have done wrong so far in the last 55 minutes?
He won't and he can't. Okay, he's not going to.
Oh.
You know they don't. These are just drive-by comments because they can't. So let's look at the book of Joshua. Okay, so let's look at the book of Joshua. Muhammad conquers the polytheists of Mecca, so we are told. Joshua conquers the polytheists of Canaan. Isn't that an odd parallel? Let's have a look. Joshua knows who his enemies are. Muhammad seems not to. Let's look at reference to people's names in the book of Joshua as a percentage of all references. 31% of the people in the book of Joshua are pagan or non-Jewish. 69% are Jewish or pre-Mosaic biblical characters. So 31% of the named individuals in Joshua are Canaanites. A third. Joshua travels throughout Canaan. He's driving out the pagan inhabitants of the land. Now you've got a genuine military mission into enemy territory. So this results in a very high contemporary name density. Specifically, he names the pagan kings and the cities he encounters in the landscape, right? The Quran's failure to name a single Meccan pagan enemy leaves us with a statistical vacuum, a complete lack of data. And the mismatch proves that the Meccan war is a literary fabrication. Unlike Joshua, who identifies his enemies, right? The Quranic authors are writing a very sterile sectarian polemic detached from actual history that they are supposedly claiming to record with zero verifiable facts and details.
Yes. Which makes me believe that whoever wrote the Quran was written somewhere else, far from Mecca and Medina.
Yep. Yep. Actually, Calvinism was called Calvino-Turkism, or basically Calvino-Islamic religion. It was well known at that because everyone saw the similarities between Allah and the Calvinist idea of God. And also, John Calvin was a lawyer. He didn't get a theological degree. John Calvin got a law degree, just so you know. It's a religion founded by a lawyer. So yeah. No, exactly. We haven't heard a single credible, clear-cut argument to prove Muhammad exists. They cannot even prove that Mecca existed. They'll claim, oh, the Qibla was changed in 624 to point towards Mecca from Jerusalem. Why was it pointing to Jerusalem in the first place? And then two, can you prove that Mecca existed in 624? Good luck with that. Towards Mecca from Jerusalem. I'm hearing myself there. Someone's coming through with my audio.
Okay.
Yeah. JC, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I was muted, so the sound was not coming from my end. But
Yeah.
yeah, everything that you said is just what it is. This is yes, they cannot actually prove these things. So normally is they try to just change the topic. Don't talk about Islam. When we're putting these things out there is because they have been programmed to not do this research. So we are cursed by Allah by having to do this work for them. And it's like, no, there is no Muhammad. If he was in the book, think about it. In the traditions, he's described as a guy who thinks that he is the last of the prophets, the most important person ever. And then you go to the book 4 times, no names of the parents in the book, no names of the Sahaba, only Zayd, which you can debunk easily. And the whole thing makes no sense. It's like, well, he just didn't exist. The guy giving this book to the world was not a guy called Muhammad. Can you prove otherwise? And he's like, no, you guys don't speak Arabic, you don't know what it is, and all of that. And it's like nonsense. Just go to your imam who will just tell you the narrative. But we're doing something different here.
Yeah. I mean, why is the Quran 96% talking about Bible characters? It doesn't reference its own environment. Why is it speaking
Can you?
about Alexander the Great? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, yeah. What I'm gonna say is, have you ever thought how big is the actual size of the Quran?
I mean, this
If
guy just
you take,
mentioned
did
it's
he
very
talk about
tiny.
it?
It's tiny.
Yeah, yeah. If you take all the repeated stories out of the Quran, which is gonna save
Oh,
Muhammad
it's nothing.
a
Yep.
big problem of the contradiction, it will be a small booklet, literally a small booklet. Any person who have some access to ink and paper can write the Quran in a few days, not in 23 years, in few days. Right now, if Muhammad would spend every day to write one verse, not two, not three, one verse, he can rewrite the entire Quran in less than 20 years. One verse a day. Imagine taking the repeated story out. You can write the Quran in a couple, 3 years. There's no point in a slow writings. If you're an
Yep.
author like myself, I wrote a book 700 pages in 6 months. I can write the Quran in 7 days, the whole
Right.
entire every single Quran in a week.
Right. Now, Joshua references Sihon, king of the Amorites, Og, the king of Bashan, the chiefs of Sihon and Midian, like Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the sons or descendants of Anak, Arba, the greatest of the Anakim, Sheshai, Ahiman, Talmai, Asa. So Joshua is fighting Canaanite polytheist kings. Now, the Bible has been used and is still being used to find, to identify archaeological digs, right? To identify things that are found or to locate or to know where to dig, right? So the Bible says, look, go dig here. People use that as a way to find where to dig or to identify things they find. It's used for archaeology. What has been attributed to the Quran as an archaeological book? Zero, nothing, literally nothing. Many of these towns in the Bible have been found, they've been dug up. We're finding more and more all the time. Let's look at Jeremiah. Okay, foreign nations, polytheist, idol worshipping Babylon. And Jeremiah includes Hebrew poetry and sermons, stylistically in a genre of literature similar to the Quran.
Obviously, it's the Hebrew text, not in the English or other translation.
Right. So Jeremiah knows about a fight with the polytheists, right? So he mentions 29% pagan, 71% Jewish or pre-Mosaic biblical characters. So Jeremiah names his pagan enemies in Babylon and Egypt. 29% of his world consists of named contemporary non-believers, right? So this is, again, a statistical signature of a real historical mission that shows the Quran is a vacuum. It's completely devoid of actual historical data, usable historical data, right? So the Meccan War is a geographic fraud. It lacks the names of the people it claims to have fought. Whereas Jeremiah, Joshua, all of these books lists the names of their friends and their enemies, right? So this is a failure in the Quran that does not exist in the records of any of the biblical texts. Yeah.
And Jeremiah was not talking about these names of people who were hundreds of years before his time. This is the people of his days. Have something to do with his ministry. Have something to do with his people at the time, which makes sense. When Muhammad is talking about people, I don't even know who they were.
Yep. Neither do I. I mean, it's vague as heck. I mean, we've done what, 46 episodes on the Quran, and I still have no idea what the heck is going on in that book. You know?
When you read the Bible, you know what is going on, you know the places, you know the people. If you want like deeper theological information, like how the prophecies are linked and things like that, then you study in greater detail. But otherwise, you can just read the stories and it tells you the regions and all of that. But when you go to the Quran, and Muslims will do this all the time, is, well, let's have a look at Ibn Kathir. They even realize that the book doesn't have any information unless you read a translation where they have added a lot of extra correcting bits, or you go to Ibn Kathir and Al-Qurtubi and all of those guys. The Quran doesn't have that information.
Yeah. Talking about the Bible as a GPS for traveling. Talking about the Bible as a GPS for traveling. We got in the Bible some maps like that. Okay.
Give me a
Here we
second.
go.
Hold on. Yep.
I'm gonna show a little bit more maps up here. Here we go. More maps. Yes, indeed. And believe it or not, these cities. You see the cities here? You see
Yep.
the city in Israel? Can you imagine? I actually have to study in seminary in the Old Testament survey and the New Testament survey these cities at the location. Except in my test, my professor give me a white piece of paper and ask me to put in it, for example, one of the tests, draw me the trips which the Apostle Paul took in his ministry. So now you have to open the entire Bible of all the letters and you put it on a map. Start from Jerusalem and you make Paul trip all the way to Turkey. Now, no, the whole, and you put the city on it. Or you can open the map of Israel if you do Old Testament survey, and the professor give you a piece of paper and say, okay, put on it the cities, the location of the Old Testament, old names and new names, because some of these names has changed. Some are still the same. Jerusalem is still Jerusalem, but some of the cities has changed. And boy, that was a hard test. I took geography class in Egypt in my school, but not like in seminary. Why? Because you have to put all these names of all these cities on the white piece of paper in the right spot. Sometimes the teacher feel good for you. He put you the Mediterranean Sea, and he put you the Red Sea, and the Jordan River, and the Sea of Galilee in the top, and the Dead Sea in the bottom, and fill all the missing of whatever he asked. That is a quiz. You give that quiz to Allah, to Jibreel, to Muhammad. Well, good luck. They have a big F. I got A's in these classes, but Allah, Jibreel, and Muhammad will get a big fat F because they don't know. They even know where is anything ever take place.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, we know, I've covered this before in the past, but Paul did multiple missionary journeys, and we've got the routes, we've got the cities, we've got the durations, and they all match historically. So we've got names of places that he visited, he walked, he took ships, and so on. He didn't fly on a donkey, though. He didn't fly on a donkey.
We did
But
not.
we
He
have
took a ship, and the ship have a wreck, and the wreck was in the island, and we know exactly where it happened. It's not like a made up story, Lloyd. We know exactly where Paul went, what happened where.
Yep. So let's look at Joshua's word cloud. Okay. Who do we see in Joshua's word cloud? We have Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah.
Sure.
We have a whole host of like Baruch,
Nebuchadnezzar, and
right?
of course, yeah.
And then you've got, Nebuchadnezzar, very well known, the Pharaoh, Necho, right? You've got Rehab, you've got Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, right? So you've got a number of well-known names, I guess, from the Old Testament. So you've got a very clear list of names, right? Which are historically correct for the time, right? Geographically correct, linguistically correct. But the Quran will say, well, there was a guy from the town of the goats, and he came and he stood on the left of the crowd, but on the other side of the city, right? Because he came on a different day than they came. And you're like, huh?
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. That's too much knowledge from the Quran, man. You just need to shake your head, say dumb for dumbers. That's exactly what it is. Dumb for dumbers.
So we've got Odin what is this? Odin the German the German shepherd who thinks he's smart. Good grief. Anyway, so let's have a look at another one. One more, prophet unlike Moses. So let's look at the book of Deuteroscopy, right?
Deuteronomy.
So let's look at, in Deuteroscopy, we've got 28% pagan, 72% Jewish or pre-Mosaic. So the book of Deuteroscopy takes place before Israel enters the land, right? Even here, 28% of named individuals are non-Israelites, right?
The real people, real names,
So
I said, Brother Lloyd, I said real names of real people of real locations. It's not made up.
Yep, it's not fiction. So basically, one of these prophets is not like the other. Can you guess which one is not like
the bluebird? The bluebird, yeah.
Hold on. Since these people are just here to waste our time, I'll say goodbye to the camera, guys. We won't miss you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And
they cannot handle the truth, brother. They cannot handle the truth. I mean, you can learn that lesson from the frog. What do you call that frog? The character frog in cartoon?
Kermit. That's Kermit.
Kermit can teach us more about Muhammad than anybody else. Yep.
Yep. So let's have a look at the comparison here. Paul, Joshua, Jeremiah, Moses, right? The books of the Bible. These are consistent across the Old and the New Testament. You have a consistent, in the sample that he has here, a consistent percentage, right?
Sure.
Which is, you can see there's a consistency here. Whereas if you look here in the Quran, there's something wrong with these numbers. He doesn't know any pagans. And then these pagan names are titles, not names, right? And then, so there's already a confusion. These aren't proper nouns. These are broad general terms. Who's the father of flames? Yeah, the bird is the word. Exactly. Sorry. Yeah. Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, it's amazing. You think if Muhammad will be like Moses, like Jeremy, like Joshua, like Paul, like any other character you pick up from the Bible, the 96 will be green and the 4% will be blue, and it will be most of it the pagans who live around him, whom he was sent by Allah to lead them to Islam.
Yeah. You know what? This fool came on, Al-Murd 77. They are willfully deaf, dumb, and blind, so they will never return to the right path. The problem is Allah does say that he will lead whom he wills and he will lead astray whom he wills. So you see, me being astray and not wanting to drink camel piss and shag 9-year-olds is simply for the fact that Allah made that decision for me. I have no power because Allah, in his with his power and control of the world, he basically said, no, Lloyd, I'm not going to lead you down the right path. I'm sending you down a different path. So you see, it's not about me. Allah did it. So blame Allah. Don't blame me, because look, man, choose your freaking theology. Get it straight. Calvinists have the same problem. And it's like, yeah. So, Usama, yeah.
And by the way, that verse which given in the Quran, it come from the Bible. But Muhammad twisted to make it sound that ugly teaching. And the Bible says they have eyes that cannot see, they have heart and they cannot understand, they have mind and cannot comprehend. And it's talking about people who choose not to. They refuse to believe. They don't want to see God, even though heaven and earth declare the work of God's hand. And if we look at the nature, it will lead us, as Romans, the apostle wrote to the Romans in his letter, the first 2 chapters. You mean God declared himself in everything, but they choose to look at the creation and reject the creator to believe in anything else. But in the Quran, the problem is it is Allah who made me not to see, who made me not to believe, who made me not to understand. That is a problem.
And these Muslims come along and blame me for that. Like, hello? Allah said you will lead you astray, or you will
believe in his deception, believing that Jesus died on the cross and rose again, when in reality, Jesus did not die on the cross. But Allah made it look like that. And by the way, in reality, in the scholars were writing, yes, he did die. 3 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. God help us.
Well, we could actually address that comment if you like, about the right path, the Sharia. If you like, very quickly, we can actually just go to the Quran and see what it says and see how it tells a very different story. But we can do it after we're finished with the slides.
Yeah, and I've got some notes to add as well. I'll add a few notes at the end, but yeah, go on. Okay, well, okay, let me finish this and then we'll do that. Yeah. Okay, so where are all the references to the polytheists? The speaker in the Quran assumes that his audience knows way too much about the Bible. He's not addressing a pagan audience. He's clearly debating the Bible, right? And butchering it as he goes, right? And then, of course, Quran 2:144. Good grief. Oh, what a coincidence. Indeed, we see you turning your face towards heaven. O Prophet was inserted there. Now we will make you turn towards a direction that will please you. Quran 2:144, Surah Al-Baqarah. So in Islam's beginning, all the mosques faced Jerusalem because it was talking to a Jewish and Christian audience, right? The Hijaz is a much later political invention that is moving the center of power away from the established Levantine landscape to create a whole new myth. And the sacred geography of the Hijaz is retroactively forced onto a movement that originally lived in the northern Levant. There is literally no mention of any city named Mecca in any contemporary 7th century trade document, tax record, or map from the Byzantine, Persian, or Ethiopian empires. And Yemeni centers, however, oddly, Yemeni centers like Sana'a, Marib, and Najran appear in trade, administrative, and historical contexts tied to Sabaean and Himyarite networks. We do see these names. We don't find Mecca. We don't find Medina. Your thoughts, Usama, before I go on?
You're right on the money. Right on
Yeah.
the money.
JC?
Yeah, absolutely spot on.
Yeah, I mean, so there's some serious problems. JC, before I go on, do you want to mention your thing? Just to go to Quran 2, and then I'll go to my notes and my findings from after this.
Well, yeah, would you like to pull up a couple of verses from the
Yeah, I
Quran?
guess we
That's
can
in
do that.
Surah 45.
45.
I'm gonna go
and
there.
verses 16 to 18.
Here and 16 to 18. I got it in the Arabic language in front of me. لقد أتينا بني إسرائيل الكتاب والحكم والنبوة ورزقناهم من الطيبات وفضلناهم على العالمين وآتيناهم بينات من الأمر فما اختلفوا إلا من بعد ما جاءهم العلم بغيا بينهم إن ربك يقضي بينهم يوم القيامة فيما كانوا فيه يختلفون ثم جعلناك على الشريعة من الأمر فاتبعها ولا تتبع أهواء الذين لا يعلمون. What about these 3 verses?
Well, these 3 verses are, of course, exegeted as it's all about Muhammad, but we have just seen that he's not there. It's all to do with Christology and so on. When we read these verses in a neutral manner, the meaning is very clear. So the first one is saying that they gave to the children of Israel, and that is the Jews, they were given scripture, judgment, and prophethood. So this establishes the thing.
He gave
That
the
is what
Jews
the
the
Jews
prophethood. No one else. He gave the Jews the prophethood.
Yeah, it's past tense, by the way.
Then-
Ataina is gave, it's done deal. And notice, by that, he prefers him. فضلناهم على العالمين. We prefer, they are the best of the whole world. Even Muhammad and the Arab, yes. Otherwise, I don't know why he favors them. He favors them to not favors them later. Anyway, that's 16. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what they get. So the children of Israel, the Jews, they get that. Then we go to the next verse, and it says that they did not differ until something happened. Now, if you're reading this in a neutral manner, it's like, okay, so the Jews are happy with their scripture, prophethood, and judgment. And then something happens. It shouldn't take a genius to join the dots and say, okay, so what happened is the coming of Jesus. That's the reason that they differed. That would be the reading this in a neutral manner.
Yeah.
And then the very next verse is saying,
the one thing, brother, the one thing you're talking about, من بعد ما جاءهم العلم, after they came, the knowledge came to them. Or you can say the truth came to them, which is obviously can be interpreted easily, makes sense until Jesus came in, because until Jesus' days, they were only Jewish people. And then after Jesus, they became Jews and Christians. Go ahead.
yep.
Mhm.
So exactly. So there are the Jews with that stuff, and they are happy. And then knowledge comes to them. So something comes to them, to the Jews specifically, and then they differed. And when we go to the next verse, it says, and then we put you on the correct path. So if you read this in a neutral manner, it's all about Jesus. Why would Muhammad be there addressing the children of Israel when the Christians actually came, say, after, because of Jesus? It's jumping one prophet, one revelation, and so on. So this has to go from the Jews being happy and then differing over knowledge coming to them, Jesus, and then you are put on that path, which is the new covenant. But all of this is exegeted, creating a whole different story about Muhammad. Even in that one that you have there, Sahih International, see how he adds, and we put you, oh Muhammad. It's like he's not in the verse.
Yeah. Then we let me read that verse from my translation here, verse 18 of Quran chapter 45. Then we made you follow the law concerning the affair, so follow it, and do not follow the desire of those who had not who do not know the affair. I mean, even that verse is ambiguous. What laws? I mean, if I take it a little bit literally, ثم جعلناك, so we made you على شريعة, on a law من الأمر, from the affair. Which affair? What law? So follow it. and do not follow
Based on
those who do not know. It's just, brother.
and based
Uh,
on everything that we
it,
have seen from Lloyd, if the two people that are mentioned the most are Jesus and Moses, what would be these things? So it's supposed to be very clear. Moses, that is for the children of Israel, and then what happens is the next guy, and it's all about Jesus. So when somebody like this comments and says, "Oh, you need to follow the right path," and it's like, actually, you are kind of right about that. But this book originally was selling the Bible. It was not selling the Quran that appears hundreds of years later.
yeah, listen to the Al-Tabari interpretation to the last portion of this verse. So do not follow those who do not know. So Allah is telling Muhammad, do not follow those who are calling you among the ignorance of Allah, that those who do not know the truth from the vanity, so that you will work with it, so that you will be destroyed. I mean, what kind of God is that to speak to the best messenger, the best prophet, say, oh, by the way, do not follow what they're calling to you. They are ignorant. They do not know. Because if you follow what they're calling you, you will be destroyed. And what is that? Why would we never say or read anything like that about any true biblical prophet in the Bible? Can you show me a verse like that written anywhere in the Old Testament or the New Testament concerning the true godly men whom God sent before Muhammad? Why only Muhammad? Allah speaks to him like speaking to a little baby. Oh, don't put your finger in the plug on the wall. It have electricity. It will shock you. It will kill you, Muhammad.
Yeah. So a couple of findings. I've got some notes that I'll mention, and just to add to the presentation I gave. But the sin definition for certain words, right? If we apply the same process to various words, right? If the audience is 96% biblical and they are biblically literate, then the standard Islamic narrative for 4 terms becomes impossible, right? Like Ummiyun, right? The illiterate, right? So the sin claims that Muhammad was illiterate and he preached to illiterates. You cannot preach if you're illiterate, but you know the Bible and you're debating the Bible with people who know the Bible. Then how are you teaching to illiterates as an illiterate? You're not. You've read the Bible because you're debating the Bible, right?
Brother Lloyd, I have a problem in my translation. Never translate the word ummi to me illiterate, but ummi
No,
it
exactly.
means
It's
the
Gentile.
Gentile,
It's Gentiles,
not a
exactly.
Jew.
No, nothing makes
You
sense.
cannot tell me all the people who lived, or you have to convince me that all the people who live in Arabia could not read and write.
That's in the very next sentence. Ummiyun doesn't mean illiterate. It means Gentiles, the nations. So the text is addressing the Gentile monotheists, distinct from the Jews or the Al-Yahud. The word Furqan, supposedly the criterion, right? So it's a vague criterion, the Quran being the criterion between right and wrong, but the text is a sectarian homily, right? It's targeting a specific monotheistic group, and this is very technical terminology. So this is actually the Syriac Furqana, right? Salvation or redemption. The text is not offering a criterion, it is offering a path of salvation to Arabs that bypasses the Jewish law. It's talking about Jesus as the salvation, Jesus as the redemption, as we just discussed now in Quran 2, right? Ayah, okay, miraculous verses of the Quran, but the text points to the signs of Moses and Jesus, who make up 40% of the names in the Quran. So these are biblical signs or tokens of authority, the signs that show that Moses is preferred by God and that Jesus is obviously also sent by God, because these miracles are signs of his authenticity, that he has fulfilled the prophecies, right? So clearly there's an issue there. And the word Quran, this is the Quran root, right? It's a verbal recitation revealed to a pagan, 1 verse a day for 23 years. No, the text is obsessed with the written Bible. The Quran is obsessed with the written Bible, right? And the word is from the root Kiryana, which is a lectionary in Syriac. So this was a written liturgical reading used in a church service. It wasn't something improvised in a cave. So the context is sectarian and it is biblical. So the Arabs, they Arabized all of this and they dumbed it down to fit a supposed ignorant pagan's backstory that the same data proves does not exist.
Exactly. Absolutely. I love it. I love this info. I love
Your
this
thoughts,
info.
guys?
Should we very briefly prove one of the points that you mentioned there is one that we discussed a little while ago. Let me actually share my screen and Here we go. So this is the word Furqan, and this is just one of the verses. Of course, there are other verses in the Quran that mention the word, and this is no longer disputed. It means salvation. It means deliverance. It comes from the Syriac. Christoph Laxenberg speaks about it. Gabriel Reynolds speaks about it. It's known. And when we go to the translations, we see that that's the word, and very often the translators will say that they translate it as criterion. Then we have some that says discernment, so basically how you know what is right and wrong. However, Arbery, funnily enough, he actually gives the game away. And even in his translation, he translates this as, and we gave Moses the book, the kitab, and the salvation. So even according to their own translators, we have this one here where they have messed up a little bit. So Furqan does not mean criterion.
The salvation.
Furqan, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, when I translated the Quran, there's so many words. I did this. You have to remember, guys. I did that 17 years ago, and I have so many words. I have no idea what I was looking for.
Yeah, but since you met me, you've become much more inspired. All the evidence, everything you've learned has improved your knowledge. So now you're doing so much better.
So obviously, I put it here. It's
what's
Quran chapter
2. Sorry, go on.
What is the chapter and the verse for that word? 253?
253, yeah. By the way, the mushrikun that supposedly the Quran is talking to, just from my notes, the mushrikun of the polytheists supposedly mentioned in the Quran left exactly 0 physical trace in the archaeological record of the 7th century. Literally not a trace. Why? Because they didn't exist. So either we're looking at what did exist was, not the mushrikun, or they just made it all up. So either we're looking at something that already existed, that we know existed, or they made it up. So there's no such mushrikun historically, archaeologically. Go on, Usama.
I am done. Very good.
Okay.
I love the show today. It was very good. And man, we're on time because 1:30 I have to leave to go live in another broadcast with Worldview Weekend. But we got another 2 minutes.
Yep. Okay, yeah. So all of these words are Syriac loan words. These words all come out of the Syriac, as we've covered already in the past. And then, for instance, supposedly the audience is pagan or polytheist, but it's 96% biblical names. How can it be a pagan audience, right? Then Arabia was full of idols, right? But there are 0 pagan inscriptions in the 7th century Hijaz. Only monotheistic, right? The Quran supposedly taught new stories, right? But the Quran relies on people already knowing the Bible because it references the Bible in all of those stories, or it references Gnostic or mythical stories, right? And then, of course, it's supposed to be an Arabic language revelation, but no, it's mostly Syriac. 55% of the language of the Quran, the religious language, is Syriac. So it's Aramaic. So yeah, it cannot be. So last word to you and last word to JC.
Last word is this. Very simple. This is very simple. I hope and I pray that our dear Muslim friends will go back. Those who join us a little bit later, or those who really are seeking the truth, watch this broadcast one more time. It's an hour and a half. It's not a lifetime. An hour and a half. Go back and listen. And guess what? Investigate. Investigate the information, the facts we shared with you on this broadcast. If it's wrong, it's awesome. When you see us coming back next time, say you were wrong there, you're wrong here. Just don't insult us in an empty void air. No. You were wrong about that verse or that this information or that this knowledge because it's actually this or that with proof. Don't speak from your head. Don't make it a general talk. And if what we have shared is true, hey, dig deep, learn more. Don't be like the fool of the Muslims who have been living as Muslims all their life, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and they have never thought to question simply because Allah taught them not to question. Maybe it's time for everybody, investigate. If we're wrong, prove us wrong. If we're right, continue, follow us.
Just give me evidence Mecca existed in the 7th century, the 6th century.
Exactly.
JC, last word to you.
Yeah, a great show, Lloyd. There is a lot of very good information, and it really helps us understand everything that we've been discussing even better. It does look like the Quran has one origin story, And then the Islamic narrative has a different story, origin story, and the goal is to make sure that we don't know where the Quran came from. But we're going to keep digging until we will get there. But yeah, it's been a phenomenal show, and it's been great talking with you both and everyone watching as well. It's been a great show. So thank you all, and God bless you all.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here today for the great conversation. Sorry, trolls, if we hurt your feelings. But I'm sure you guys will get over it and learn nothing.
You
and
hurt my
go on to be
feelings all
trolled further.
the time, and I never complain. You know?
Yep. So guys, so thank you very much, everyone. God bless. And please do like, share, subscribe, tell people about this. And for those who do support the channel, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Take care, guys. God bless. And see you soon. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye-bye.